Welcome to the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometime nostalgic, sometimes cynical, 50-episode look back at pop culture.
Join us as we revisit movies, cartoons, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question,
does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
Today, we're not just ruining our childhoods, we're also ruining my brother's childhood. So this should be fun.
As usual, you have Steve.
Megan.
And Tim. How's it going, guys?
Not as usual.
Not as usual. We wanted Tim on here before, but he has a very busy schedule. Tim's here. We're going to play a game. Are you excited, Tim?
I am unbelievably excited.
I'm very excited. I know you're not excited really at all. I've been so excited.
Very is more than unbelievably, I think.
Maybe. I don't know. And Steve named our awards.
I did. Nope, you gotta wait for it.
No, I don't have to wait for
This
it.
is the first annual Remis, named after Reminiscent, because we're looking back.
That is true.
So it is our first annual Remis award.
Yeah, we have some fun categories, and the stakes are high because the winners or losers, because some of these are best of and some are worst of. And the winners and losers, we are going to feature
next season.
Yep.
Season 2 of Stop Ruining My Childhood.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So, Tim.
I didn't know that. I did not know that twist.
We didn't want to put that kind of pressure on.
Now the pressure's really... And I'm worried that my choices will not live up to the standards of your listeners or yourself, but I'm going to do my best.
Well, we can just vote against you every time. That's fine.
That's okay. We can only ask for your best.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a couple of different categories, and we're going to go head-to-head with the third person acting as the judge. But before we get into that, we have...
my favorite segment, the non-sponsored snack.
Tim, tell us about the non-sponsored snack today. What delicacies have you made?
We allowed Tim to choose.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was my one stipulation for joining today. I insisted that we do tuna melts and purple Kool-Aid, which is really a staple of my younger days and Megan's.
Yeah.
Really, there's not much to it. You buy hamburger rolls, you buy tuna in a can, you mix that tuna with mayonnaise, then you put it on the roll, then you put one slice of Kraft American cheese over the top, and you put it in the broiler until the top of the cheese just barely browns. Kids love it.
My favorite thing about this description is that you were like, tuna in a can. Like, somebody's going to be like, listen, I bought this beautiful piece of ahi tuna.
Well, now...
It's a delicious
True.
steak, and now I'm going to mash it up with some mayonnaise and put Kraft cheese
Well,
on
now
top.
they have it in those packets, but we didn't have that back then.
No, we
Younger.
didn't. That's true. I didn't think about that.
Let me ask you this, Tim. Does it have to be Kraft cheese?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Kraft,
so.
we will be waiting on a sponsorship call. We're open to that, and just, I'll wear a Kraft t-shirt. I'm okay with that.
I'm
That's a good
so
call.
jealous. There's literally nothing in this tuna melt that I'm allowed to eat at the moment.
I have never eaten a tuna melt in my entire life.
So let me give you a little bit about the history of the tuna melt.
And we'll try it a little bit.
While you're eating, I'll talk about it. Tuna and cheese. First of all, this has been a crowd favorite since the 1960s, okay? And tuna fish became extremely popular during World War II. It became like the most popular fish, probably because it can be canned.
Yeah.
Right? So, picture this. Woolworths. They used to have a restaurant there in the Woolworths store.
Okay.
At Woolworths, the story goes that a cook at Woolworths accidentally dumped tuna salad onto a thing of grilled cheeses. And I guess was like, I'm going to eat this anyway. And hence the tuna melt was born.
Interesting.
And then it became really popular in the 1960s, probably because at that time, it was something like Tim said. It's really easy to make. If you're a mom, you can whip it up real quickly, right? But it still seems like, in that point, still seems like you're cooking, right?
It's a cheap staple food. It's kind of like the American version of pizza, right? Pizza became so popular because it was cheap. A little bit of dough, a little bit of sauce, a little bit of cheese.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that it was kind of like, oops, by accident I invented a tuna melt sandwich. So let's talk about the tuna melt first, and then we'll rate the Kool-Aid separately. We do 1 out of 10 for the movies, typically. we have a little bit, obviously, we're playing a game, and we do 1 out of 5 for the snack. And today, we're going to go back to our first episode and rate it out of juice boxes.
Oh, nice.
What do you give... Tim, this is one of your childhood favorites. Does it hold up, or did you ruin your childhood?
Of course, it's a 10 out of 10. I mean, it's not even it's a no-brainer.
Well, we go out of 5, but okay.
Snack's only 5, so you can't go out of 10.
I did that one time, too. It's fine.
I'll up your juice boxes then. I'll do 5 out of 5 Capri Suns.
Oh, nice. We did Capri Suns for one of our other shows.
I like that.
Tim's still a 5 out of 5, so not ruining his childhood.
No.
Takes you right back. We also had a debate of whether or not we were broiling them correctly, because that's just how our mom always did the broiling.
Yeah. Alternative theory as to how they were created. Karen invented them in 1990. Our mother.
Yeah. She was like...
Also a possibility. Right up there with the Woolworth theory.
She was like, what can I do with this tuna to make my kids eat it? Let me put some dairy on top.
I mean, I still make them from time to time. When you want to feel like a kid again.
It's very similar to a peanut butter and jelly in terms of
right.
like who likes it and how it is. So Steve.
Okay, so there's some background here. As I mentioned, I've never had a tuna melt before.
Right.
This very moment. The idea of tuna melt did not interest me. The fact of hot tuna fish with cheese on it. And to be honest, my only real awareness of tuna melts was like as the brunt of jokes in movies and shows. Where people be at a diner and they'd be like, just don't order the tuna melt. Right? So I never really thought of it as a good thing. That being said...
I knew it.
This tastes almost exactly like a tuna noodle casserole.
Oh, yeah.
It has the tuna... the mayo, the cheese,
interesting,
and the bun, which would be like the noodle.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5.
Whoa.
Wow. Well, I have to say,
that's crazy.
It's not surprising then that Tim and I grew up with this because, as you know, we grew up Lutheran. And Lutherans are known for their casseroles. Tuna noodle casserole is like a Lutheran staple. It's like at every family, like potluck, every church potluck. Yeah, so that's kind of nice. I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's surprising. All right. Probably because we didn't burn the top as much as we probably would if it was just me and Timmy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we come to the Kool-Aid. The year was 1900. Notable Nebraskan, which I got this off of nebraskastudies.org. Listen, I don't want to be mean to the people of Nebraska, but I find that funny. Notable Nebraskan.
Any story that starts with notable Nebraskan is going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Edwin Elijah Perkins, was born in 1889. At the age of 11, he's working at his father's store in the village of Hendley, Nebraska. And his future wife and childhood friend, Catherine Melda Kitty Shoemaker. This is the most 1900 names ever.
Nebraska.
She also starred in The Music Man.
Yeah, exactly. She introduces him to a product we like to call Jell-O. And he was like, I need to get in on this. So at age 13, after thinking about it and pondering it for 2 years, he signs up for an adult class on how to manufacture prepackaged foods. And then he signs up for another adult class on how to run and start your own print shop at 13.
Okay.
He combined the two types of businesses and ran it out of the back of Hendley Post Office. I guess they were like, go ahead, kid. And he had a mail order company and he started selling perfume at first. And also this stuff called bluing, which was like before bleach, when white and clothes. In 1909, he starts also publishing the local paper. So he had a number of different things going on.
He was like a jack of all trades.
Yeah. In 1921, he starts the Perkins Product Company, and he starts an honor made with no H, but it's still pronounced like with the H. They sell 125 different items, lotions, soaps, food flavorings, jelly making products.
It's like a door-to-door kit kind of thing?
Mail order.
Oh.
Which is like, it's like...
Catalogs were big then.
Yeah, but it's also, it's like HelloFresh before HelloFresh.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So the biggest thing is the fruit drink concentrate. So they start selling this thing, it's called Fruit Smack. And it's a liquid concentrate that comes in a corked bottle, but it was really messy.
Yeah, it's probably almost like ink because it's concentrate.
Yeah, and or like really like it's like syrup, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you'd mix it, and then they change it in 1927. They turn it into a powder.
Okay.
And that's where first they have Kool-Aid ADE. And they sell it as a soft drink, which is interesting to me.
Why was everything turned into a powder in the 20s?
Well,
wasn't it the Roaring 20s? Shouldn't everything have been fresh and new?
Yeah, right.
I was thinking about this. It seems like that was like an era where they were starting to do.
I think it has to do with like the war and transporting things as well.
After World War I.
Yeah, and they're trying to make things more convenient. So what happened though is that it's going okay in the 20s, but then the Depression hits. Well, here's the thing. They figured out right now we're selling Kool-Aid for 10 cents a pack. But we're making a huge profit, like 8 cents. If we sell it at 5 cents a pack, we still make a profit. And then a pack of Kool-Aid, which is a whole gallon, as you guys know, we just made a gallon of it. A whole gallon can be made for the same amount of money as one Pepsi or one Coke.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
So the Kool-Aid basically explodes.
So your moms who are trying to shop for a bunch of kids in a depression get Kool-Aid because it's going to go a lot farther.
Yeah, and so it lasts way longer, and it's just as sugary. I mean, let's be frank.
Yeah.
So then, and this was not on the Notable Nebraskans, because that just ends kind of like with him. But the Kool-Aid Man then takes it even a step further, because in 1975, we have a concept that was invented in the 50s, but they never put it into play. And in 1975, they were like, let's do this. And oh yeah, the Kool-Aid Man was born. And by the 80s, it exploded, right? He became like really exploding out of a wall. They had a video game, a Kool-Aid Man video game of him.
Really?
They had like little comics that would come sometimes with the product.
Yep. T-shirts, all that kind of stuff.
The Pitcher Man to the Kool-Aid Man, basically. And it was actually pretty popular with kids. And I think that's one of the other thing, and I couldn't find the exact date, but I believe that it was also in the 80s that we got the version that Tim made for us today, which is you don't have to add sugar.
Yeah, our sugar was already added.
Because, Tim, you remember Mrs. Chris? Mm-hmm. So she was our babysitter when we were little. Yeah. She would make...
Her last name was not Chris.
No!
That's one of those young child things you do. Just call her Mrs. Chris.
Yeah. You know? So Mrs. Chris would make Kool-Aid, and our mom bought the kind that you didn't have to add sugar to. But I walked in the kitchen one time, and this woman is full. She had like a huge scoop, like a 5-cup scoop, and she dumped that into the pitcher, poured the Kool-Aid powder, just straight sugar. And I was like, there are 5 cups of sugar in that Kool-Aid. So having said that, I did taste the Kool-Aid. I hate purple, and I don't like Kool-Aid. It's way too sweet for me, but I really only drink water, so I'm kind of not the right target audience. We'll start with Steve, because we started with Tim last time. What are you going to go with? Have you had Kool-Aid in a while?
Yeah, actually, I just had Kool-Aid like a week ago. I was at my nephew's birthday party, and they had Kool-Aid pouches and a cool thing, and I was like, oh, okay.
I was like, in what capacity have you been just drinking Kool-Aid?
I was like, soda, water. I was like,
purple
Kool-Aid.
stuff.
I was like, Kool-Aid, oh yeah.
Nice.
And I grabbed one, but yeah, I enjoy Kool-Aid. I really like grape. So I think I'm gonna give this... I mean, Kool-Aid's one of those things I forget about now a lot as an adult. But I really do enjoy it. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 4.
4 juice boxes out of 5.
4 juice boxes out of 5.
Okay, nice. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to do the same thing and agree, but I think I'm also going 4 out of 4 Kool-Aid juice boxes.
Well, it's 4 out of 5. That's okay.
I keep messing up the maths.
That's all right.
But yeah, 4 out of 5. It brings me back to, there's nothing in the house. I have nothing to eat. I'm 7 years old. It's summertime. I go make up my own Kool-Aid, and then I take it out to our very 1990s glass patio furniture that's out on the deck, and I drink my Kool-Aid. And that's how I feel.
I love that you say this like we were street urchins. We're watching Scrooge. Oh, we did Scrooge just before this. I'm 7 years old, I'm alone, and there's nothing to eat. Like, I think you mean there's nothing, like, sugary or fun to eat. Right? Yeah. We grew up in a house where our mom would be like, we're all going on a diet. And our dad would be like, I'm going to McDonald's. So sometimes we had snacks and sometimes there were no snacks to be found. All right. So
for tuna melt.
Yeah.
5 out of 5
juice boxes. And for Kool-Aid.
4 out of 4. Whoops. See what you did now, Tim?
That's awesome.
4 out of 5 juice boxes. Nice.
Pretty good scores.
That's a good score. That's great. And what I liked about this is we did Happy Meals for our 25th episode, and we did want something more substantial that was like a meal. So that's great. So when we are going to take a little bit of a break so the guys can finish their delightful tuna melts according to their ratings. And when we come back, we are going to start our game and we will have a fight to the finish. And also, do stay tuned and don't turn that podcast dial, as Steve says, because we have some great information during the break about what's coming up for season 2. So stay tuned. Steve, I found a bunch of shows on streaming networks that we don't have.
That's nice, Megan, but we work on a budget, and I'm still waiting for snack companies to sponsor us. So unless you can find a new way to bring in sponsorship, our choices in viewing are limited.
YouTube is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why I set up our page on Patreon. People can help support our show and get exclusive access to content.
What about all those bonus episodes we got hanging around?
So our old bonus episodes are going to go up, and then we're going to have new bonus episodes about once a month once we start season 2. We're also going to put ad-free versions of all our regular episodes as well.
And pictures of me spread out on a bearskin rug.
No. But we are going to be more interactive. We're going to have a poll every month, and people can vote for what episode we should do for that season.
So basically, we're going to continue with our format of cartoon, live TV show, and movie, but the 4th week in every month will get to be listener's choice from Patreon.
Exactly.
So you, the listener, are going to help decide what we watch.
And all of this content is available at each level. So if you want to support us for just a few dollars, we have those. Our first tier, it's really affordable.
And if you'd like to help us pay for what we watch,
and the snacks we eat,
you can donate a few dollars more if you're a big spender.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, if you're not comfortable doing Patreon at all, we're still going to do the regular podcast. And you can interact with us on Facebook.
I'm only talking to Patreon people.
Oh, that's not nice.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Links to subscribe are going to be in the show notes each week and also on our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com, or you could just go to patreon.com/stopruiningmychildhood. All one word.
Megan, I don't know what a Patreon is.
Oh, no. We're going to have a whole other conversation.
Okay.
All right. So, my name's Megan.
My name's Steve.
And my name's Tim.
And welcome to the Remis. Then we can get sued by Wheel of Fortune.
I was just going to be like,
I changed it up there. Did you catch that?
I can edit
a different melody.
No.
I can edit some music in.
Okay, well, you could do that too.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay. So, the Remis are based on a game that we own called Versus, where you put down different characters for different...
That's not the name of it, but we're not going to say the real name.
No, we're not going to say the real name. I thought it was called Versus.
It is not. But
anyway,
that's okay.
And you have 2 people go head-to-head, and then the third person judges, and it might be like best historical figure you want to have dinner with, or whatever.
Yep. That's how you know it's serious, guys. Yes, for those of you from the 80s and 90s, that was the sound of a Trapper Keeper opening up.
Okay.
Wonderful.
I have brought the Trapper Keeper to play today, which is how you know I'm taking this very seriously.
I'm taking it seriously because I edited my list 4 times.
I didn't hear a Trapper Keeper open for you.
All right, so our first category is Best Movie for a Date Night. We have 2 runner-ups choices. I'm gonna tell you my third, and I'll explain my choice. You say your third and explain your choice. Then we'll go 2 and 2, and then we will present to Tim our top choices, and he will judge and jury them.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I love it.
Okay. So, Steve, you go ahead. What's your third choice?
My third choice to start off with is best date night movie.
Yeah.
Say Anything from 1989
Wow.
with John Cusack and Ione Skye.
It's a good one.
Well, why did you pick that one?
It's a classic, right? When you think of like teenage love stories, you have John Cusack with the radio above his head, right? And I just remember watching it, and even when I was like preteen, you're like, oh yeah, and it's like, it's a good. You're like, I would bring a girlfriend to this, right? Because it's all about him getting a girlfriend, and I think that's just a classic people think of.
Yeah. My number 3 is the Baz Luhrmann classic Romeo and Juliet.
From what year?
From 96.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about the Leonardo
DiCaprio and Claire Danes. And they hated each other in real life, but on the screen it was magic. And she's behind the fish tank, and he's like, I would die for you. And she's like, let's fall in love in 2 days and then kill ourselves. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's a really well done movie. I think it's a great update. There's the 1968 one that's very classically done, but the Baz Luhrmann one it just has a panache to it, and it's a great romantic movie, even though they died.
You never saw the ending coming either. That's
No.
the thing about it.
No.
Yeah, that's
No
the
one
thing.
knew. No one
Well,
knew.
I think
how
it. So I put it in number 3 because I feel like it's a little bit too serious.
Yeah, that one hits me though because I'm an Elizabethan literature major and Shakespeare's my alley, so I really that was a good choice.
You're not going to comment on that, Tim. You're going to let that one go. I'm an Elizabethan.
He is known as. That's actually. Yeah, I've been to his lectures.
Yeah, that's how we introduce him at parties. This is Steve. He's an Elizabethan literature scholar.
His specialty is Shakespeare, Marlowe, and Milton. the real cool guys.
All right, my number 2 choice. I'll go first this time. Is Say Anything from 1989.
Why would you choose that, Megan? Wow. That seems like a weird out there.
I can't believe we had the same one. I originally had When Harry Met Sally, and then I feel like I bumped it because it really is more of an adult movie. So when I think of date night, I think more like people in their teens, 20s going out to a movie, right? The thing about this, though, too, is that I just remembered as you were talking, it is such a romantic movie, but also they have a whole plot line about how her dad is stealing stuff from people at the nursing home.
I was just going to say, isn't it the dad from Frasier that goes to prison or something?
Yeah, I think so. So that's my number 2. What's your number 2?
Number 2, from 1987, Some Kind of Wonderful.
Oh, that's
Eric
a good
Stoltz,
choice.
Leah Thompson, Mary Stuart Masterson.
Wow.
That is
It
good
was
choice.
a love triangle, and Mary Stuart Masterson is into Eric Stoltz, but Eric Stoltz is into Leah Thompson, right?
Yeah.
And Mary Stuart Masterson has kind of been friend-zoned because she's a tomboy, she has short hair, she works on cars, but to 10-year-old Steve, she's a smoke show. Okay? 10-year-old Steve had a little crush on Mary Stuart Masterson, and that has stuck with me, and I would bring a date to that.
Well, 10-year-old Megan had a super big crush on John Cusack, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Now it's time for the top picks.
Here we
this
go.
is where the pressure goes on. Tim
So this
to
is
judge.
the one that I judge?
This is the one
Oh,
you
okay.
judge.
I can't
Judge.
pick one of the other choices.
No.
All right.
I'm not. I wonder if we have the same thing. All right, go ahead. What's your number 1?
1997.
All right, not mine.
Fools Rush In.
No.
Matthew Perry
Stop
and
it.
Selma Hayek.
Stop it.
They play a couple who run into one another. They have a wild date night, and it ends up being like a one night stand almost.
I'm not even.
And she gets pregnant, and then they decide to get married. And he is from this very Connecticut white collar uppity waspy family, and she's from a family. They live in Las Vegas, and California. They move back and forth. She's from a very Hispanic family from Mexico. that all speak Spanish and expect her to be married to a guy who's Spanish, not from Connecticut. And so it's two cultures clash. There's a lot of chemistry between Matthew Perry and Salma Hayek, and there's also some comedy in it. I think this is a hands-down date night movie.
I'm not saying this because I want to win this game. I'm just saying this as your wife. That is a stupid choice. You picked that over Some Kind of Wonderful?
Keep talking like that, and you may not be my wife for very long.
We don't say that in our household. You know that. Steve... That movie, nobody even remembers. Tim's like, I don't even think I've ever even heard of that movie.
I've heard of it, definitely. I think it's a 90s classic. But
no, this is going to be a blowout.
Not a,
So what did you choose, Little Miss I Know Best?
1987.
Oh, I know what this is going to be already.
2 words, Princess Bride.
Yeah.
No, Princess Bride's not a date night movie.
Stop it!
It's a phenomenal movie.
Stop it.
But it's a fantasy movie.
There is fantasy. There is epic romance. You have a man coming back from almost dead to win the woman he loves. There is action. There is adventure. And there is Fred Savage, who, again, 10-year-old Megan had a super big crush on.
First off, he was not quite dead.
That's what I said.
Okay, you said almost dead.
There's a difference between almost dead
Get
and
it
not quite
right
dead.
if you're going to put Princess Bride in your mouth.
Wallace Shawn. Come on. Andre the Giant, Robin Wright. This movie has a perfect cast.
You can't argue the cast for me. I think it's an amazing cast. I don't think it falls in this category.
It does, because it's not a sap. Like, I could have said Titanic. No guy wants to go to see Titanic unless he's really trying to, like, hook up with somebody, okay? That's the only reason he's trying to go to see Titanic.
Okay, enough. We can't be... Oh, we have to have a time limit of our...
All right, go ahead, Tim.
So, Tim, you are the judge.
I mean, I don't want to sound biased and go with my sibling on this one, but I think for me, it's hands down. It's got to be Princess Bride.
It's also a litmus test. If you don't find that movie funny, I'm not going out with you.
The problem is, it's too much of my own childhood, that particular movie, and I kind of see where Steve is going with his argument, but at the end of the day, I think it could qualify as a date movie because it does have qualities that, you know, a guy could enjoy in addition to the romantic aspect that women
best sword fights of all time.
I disagree, but I'm going to bend the knee to you, the judge. So, our first winner of the first annual Remis, best date night movie,
Princess Bride. All right, now we have Steve versus Tim, and the category is best franchise.
We kind of should have said this to begin with, but as you guys know, if you've been listening to our show, everything we choose is from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's not like date night movies.
That was kind of the only constraints we had to these categories. It needed to be something in the 80s and 90s.
Good point. Thank you for saying that.
Tim, why don't you start off by giving me your third choice for this category?
All right. Well, this is this category is so... this is such a massive... Like, you could have so many arguments,
There's so many franchises.
And so many good ones. I know a lot of people listening will be, like, upset with our choices, probably. But number 3 for me, I'm going with a classic action franchise known as Die Hard.
Oh, okay. Coming right out of the gate.
Yeah, everything that I enjoy and that you need about an action movie. I mean, it has Bruce Willis starring. You have Severus Snape as the main villain.
True.
And then elements of comedy in there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the perfect... the original Die Hard is like the perfect prototypical action movie. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Die Hard with a Vengeance, like Samuel L. Jackson.
Good point.
Amazing movie. I mean, I watch it like every time it's on. I think is it Jeremy Irons? I think is he the villain in that one? Just a great movie.
Okay, well that's a
great franchise. I'm sorry,
that's a sound franchise choice. Mm-hmm. I had to go with a franchise that during the 80s and 90s had 10 movies.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and that has to be one that really... I started watching these movies when I was like 5 years old, and it shaped me, and that is the Friday the 13th franchise.
Interesting. Okay.
You can't talk about the 80s and 90s without talking about Jason and the hockey mask.
True.
You know, it's like, think about how many movies are spoofed of that.
Yeah, that's true.
Where someone's trying to scare somebody and has the hockey mask on.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. Plus, you had actors like, like Corey Feldman that came out of that was in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Which one was he?
He was in 4.
Okay.
Right, and there was a lot of other. Ming Na Wen was in.
Ming Na Wen.
Now you have to bleep yourself. Ming Na Wen was in him. You had so many people in the Friday
Who could
13th.
forget Ming Na Wen? I mean, it's a name that I've not forgotten.
Every time we talk
She's
about
an
Ming Na
act.
Wen,
She's so
we
good.
always say, we go, Ming Na Wen. Because she's
in a lot of
awesome.
stuff, yeah.
She's awesome.
Nice.
So I have to go with the Friday the 13th franchise.
Okay.
So Tim, what's your first runner-up?
My first runner-up is the Indiana Jones franchise.
Nice.
Okay.
The first movie actually not titled Indiana Jones. I believe it was titled Raiders of the Lost Ark.
It was.
I mean, the last movie, I know it was in the 2000s or 2010s or whatever, but I personally like the whole scene where he gets blown up in a nuclear bomb inside a refrigerator. I know I'm probably in the very small minority, but, classic movie, Spielberg produced, I believe. John Williams does the music, George Lucas directs, and it has Harrison Ford as the lead. And it's a great adventure film sequence. The third one, he rides off into the sunset. Sean Connery, mystical elements, including, biblical mystical elements. Like, I mean, I don't think
Last
you could
Crusade
get much
was phenomenal. Last Crusade was good.
It was.
Yeah. And Temple of Doom was good.
You could say that I chose wisely.
That's
You
true.
could.
You did choose wisely.
All right, Steve, what's your number 2?
My number 2, best franchise of the 80s and 90s, the Lethal Weapon franchise. Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, and later Joe Pesci and Chris Rock get added to it. I mean, action, comedy. There's actually even a little bit of romance and family involved. And Jet Li played a bad guy at one point. I think that those things stand for themselves.
It's a strong franchise choice. And we're not too old for it.
No. And like you said, in the 80s, 90s, there's so many franchises to choose from.
Absolutely.
So, Tim.
All right, here we go. What's
For
your
you,
number 1?
The Remy best franchise of the 80s and 90s.
I mean, again, I hate to be so stereotypical and pick this, and I hope that it qualifies because the first movie was technically in the 70s, but the Star Wars franchise has to be number 1.
We'll allow it.
I mean, the majority of the movies were in the 80s,
Yep.
and even one of the newer ones was in the 90s. I mean, you can't say best franchise without discussing Star Wars. I mean, it's like he created his own universe. Megan's probably not going to go with me on this one because I don't know
I'm
if she's a
assuming-
big
Megan does
fan.
like Star Wars.
I'm guessing that he picked the same thing.
But Empire Strikes Back, I mean, is an all-time classic, and then Return of the Jedi with those cute, adorable Ewoks, and they celebrate at the end the
That's
if
true.
we're looking at the Star Wars franchise, do we have to include the holiday special? Because
I think we all know what our thoughts are on
we
that.
all have very
If
strong
not,
thoughts
go
on
back
that.
a few weeks and listen to that.
But
It's-
epic movie, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so my nominee for the Remy's best franchise of the 80s and 90s, the Indiana Jones franchise.
Oh, man.
So, Tim, you and I were pretty close. You had it as your runner-up, and I had it as the winner.
And neither of you had Back to the Future, which would have been one of my
No.
top.
It
All
was
right.
good, but like Tim said, it's
Yeah.
tough to choose because there's so
Man,
many.
Yeah, no, this is difficult. So I think Indiana Jones is one of my favorites. What was your reasoning for picking it first?
Well, here's the thing. First off, as much as I'm allowing Star Wars for Tim, I cut Star Wars kind of out of my mind because I think of it as starting in the 70s. So it wasn't even in my in the things I was looking at. But Tim's got a good reason for putting it in there because really 77 and then all the rest were the 80s.
Yeah.
It is an 80s franchise. But Indiana Jones, especially, I did like the Crystal Skull, but if you don't count it because it's not 80s and 90s, right? Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade. There's no weak spot there. All phenomenal films. Harrison Ford does a great job of selling it. Like, Harrison Ford is Han Solo, but when you think of Harrison Ford in Star Wars, he's part of an ensemble. Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. He's that franchise.
So, here's the thing.
Indiana Jones never really developed the sort of cult following, though, that Star Wars has developed.
This is what I was going to say in judging this. I actually like Indiana Jones better, but I think for cultural impact, you have to go with Star Wars for best franchise. You guys also
I see how this is going to start going.
You guys also didn't talk about Jurassic Park, which also would have been one of my top.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
Again, culture. Well, that's also 90s.
And you only get to choose 3, so...
I know. But, yeah.
I mean, there's so many, right? Like, we could have gone with so many different ones. Back to the Future are left out.
Yeah.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
So, our winner is... We have to all say together.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our winner for best franchise is... Star Wars! Okay, so we have our first 2 categories. Now we are going on to number 3, best underrated comedies. This time, it is Megan versus Tim. So no... We'll see if we have the same...
So the fact that you guys obviously made some kind of a blood pact before that doesn't come into play.
I actually don't think we're going to match up on this
I
one.
tried very deliberately to have things that Tim would not pick.
There you go.
Okay, so, Tim, what's your number 3?
Number 3 is a great little movie known as Batteries Not Included.
Oh man, that is such a good choice. I almost did that one.
I mean, I don't think anyone really talks about it anymore. I've never seen it really on TV much. And it has a great character in it who can only speak in the form of commercials.
Yeah.
So everything he says is like quoting a commercial. That's pretty amazing.
It also has Jessica Tandy and some older people. It's a little bit like Cocoon.
Yeah. And that's another thing that a lot of these newer movies that are out nowadays, I don't know, maybe it's just kids these days, like I'm just saying that. But it seems like we don't have a lot of older actors that are in some of these movies. And I kind of like that aspect of it, you know. It had, who was it, Don Amici in it too?
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie. It's you know...
That was one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
I love Batteries Not Included, yeah.
It's got a lot of heart, too. My number 3 choice also has a lot of heart, and this is also a lesser-known movie that I think was largely forgotten. 1991's Doc Hollywood.
Oh, good choice, too.
I wanted a pet pig like Michael J. Fox so bad.
You still wanted a pet
But
pig.
the idea... This is like what would eventually become the setup for every Hallmark movie that I love. Mm-hmm. Somebody from the big city who's a big shot, has a huge ego, and then comes to a small town, and then he falls in love.
So, like every Hallmark movie, every Hallmark Channel movie ever made.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you watch the movie Cars, it is straight up a ripoff of Doc Hollywood. Like, 100%. They took the plot of Doc Hollywood, and they were like, hey, what if we make this Cars and animated? Even the car is like... the car that Michael J. Fox was driving.
I can't argue with Michael J. Fox. I mean, he's one of my favorites.
So that's my number 3. How about your number 2?
Number 2 for me is my own... See, again, I don't know if these categories are supposed to be what the general public would like or what I think is just what I like. So I just went with just what I like.
Yeah.
So I went with what I like, which is one of my cult favorite movies of all time, probably one of my favorite movies of all time, called The Burbs. It is a movie with an excellent ensemble cast. You have Tom Hanks, Carrie Fisher, this guy, I think if I'm pronouncing his name right, Rick Ducommun.
Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman. And you also have, help me out, Bruce Dern. And basically, they're all living in this suburban cul-de-sac neighborhood. It's a Joe Dante movie, the same. I believe he directed Gremlins, so it has that kind of very weird... kind of horror / comedy vibe to it, and it's just an amazing movie. I mean, it has like mixed reviews, I think, when it came out, even though it did okay at the box office, but yeah, it's been a cult favorite of mine, and I think people who are Burbs fans are like me, they're like psychotic about it.
Yeah, it's kind of a cult classic.
Jerry Goldsmith did the music too. I mean, the soundtrack actually I looked for forever.
Yeah.
It's like impossible to find. You have to buy it from like Europe or something when it used to be only available on CD, like, you know, before Apple iTunes and everything. And a great soundtrack too.
The Burbs is a cult classic, and that's why it is my number 2 choice
my
in this
gosh.
category.
Wow, you guys are the same number 2?
I specifically didn't put it as number one because I thought it would be number one for Tim.
Yeah.
But when I was trying to think, Doc Hollywood is a little bit more of a romantic comedy, but I was trying to just go straight comedy here. So in terms of things that are just comedies, like, The Burbs is a great underrated movie, and again, one that not a lot of people talk about.
It's kind of like...
Obviously, it's pretty good because you both had it as your number twos.
I mean, yes, it's a comedy, but it's not like a slapstick comedy. It's like tongue-in-cheek horror.
Yeah, it's a little bit horror,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit satire. I actually, Carrie Fisher worked as a script doctor on a lot of scripts, and I think that was one of the movies that she, helped punch up. She had a really wicked sense of humor, so... All right, now we come down to it. Your number one pick, underrated comedy of the 80s and 90s.
Underrated comedy.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure, yeah, you can go first.
All right. My pick, 1998. So right at the tail end of our time period.
Okay. Bold choice.
Norm Macdonald's
Oh, wow.
Dirty Work.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
I think that this is like a goofball comedy on the realm of a lot of Adam Sandler comedies, but it gets overlooked a lot. And I think that Norm Macdonald was a hilarious human being, and I think that he was always
Some
underrated.
people love him or hate him.
Yeah.
I love him.
Norm Macdonald is a comedic genius.
I always felt like Norm
He's almost
Macdonald...
like a comedian's comedian. He doesn't care if you laugh at his jokes.
No.
He just...
But his jokes were so heady and well thought out.
Yeah.
The humor is really dry, and I have not probably seen it since maybe 2000, so I don't know if it would hold up, but I just remember it as being a great movie. I remember, laughing through the entire thing.
Your memory's a little bit... I don't know if I would call it great.
I mean, in terms of comedy.
Yeah.
In terms of comedy, it was really funny, and he was really funny in it, and it was different. And so that's why
one of my favorite
choice.
scenes from the movie. Sorry, I don't know if we're supposed to really talk about the movies, but I don't care.
okay.
I'm going to talk about it anyway. Mm-hmm. The head writer for SNL was the head writer forever. I'm forgetting his name, but he was the main writer during the 90s, and he was Norm Macdonald's friend. He stars in that movie as a homeless person, and there's two scenes in the movie where he starts having this monologue about his life and how everything's terrible, and it kind of zooms into him with music, and then Norm Macdonald interrupt him and be like, "So here's your $2." Yeah. And I was I'm surprised that you picked that movie though, because you know that I love Norm Macdonald, and I could have picked that movie.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones that it's just forgotten, and that's why I picked it.
Yeah.
So Tim, what is your nomination for most underrated comedy?
I actually went the other direction. I don't know the exact date it came out. Maybe 1987, 1988, 1989. I think it's 1989 actually. But John Candy, John Hughes movie, Uncle Buck.
Oh.
I feel like it's well known as a comedy, but maybe not given its fair due, overall. I mean, first of all, I just love John Hughes, all of his movies, except maybe Curly Sue. Slight aberration there, but, and John Candy, I mean, he's a classic comedic actor. And the thing about that movie is it has, it's a little bit different than your typical John Hughes movie, I think, which is why maybe some people don't remember it as well, but for me, it's just a hilarious movie. And the way that John Candy, stands up to the principal at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, one of my favorite scenes ever.
I don't know if I've ever seen the whole movie.
What?
Yeah.
Well, he goes in,
Macaulay Culkin?
The principal's telling him that the younger daughter's a dreamer and a foolhardy person, and he basically tells her to take a hike.
Yeah.
And then flips her a quarter to gnaw that mole off her face. It's great. Yeah.
All right, so
Both great nominations.
okay.
Both great fields brought here to the first annual Remis Awards. But in my first role as judge, I have to go with the most underrated comedy of the 80s and 90s. Yeah! Uncle Buck.
Oh, yeah.
Uncle Buck. It was tough, though, because I am a huge Norm Macdonald fan, and that was a tough one.
Well, I appreciate your vote of confidence, Steve.
You keep bringing good choices like that, Tim. You got a good future here in the Remis.
Oh man!
All right, so the next category we have, Megan,
is greatest child star of
Okay.
the 80s and 90s. I initially had somebody on this list who I realized was still kind of a child teen star in the 80s, but really she was kind of bigger in the 70s. So then I had to change my list.
Okay.
But
so who's your second runner-up?
no, my number 3 choice from Mrs. Doubtfire, Miracle on 34th Street, and Matilda is Mara Wilson.
Oh, okay, Mara Wilson.
She's like a playwright now, and she doesn't act anymore. She like kind of retired quite young because she didn't enjoy it. But I just think she was such a great child star and very sweet but really believable. And Matilda, she carried that movie.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, for as young as she was, especially. So, what's your number 3?
So my number 3, child star, greatest child star actor or actress of the 1980s and 90s, Emmanuel Lewis Webster. You gotta love Webster.
That's a pretty good choice. Emmanuel Lewis.
Yeah. Would only be second to Gary Coleman, but he wasn't a child.
No, he really wasn't.
He just played one.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Lewis, though, excellent. Yeah, definitely.
Emmanuel Lewis was adorable.
Yeah, he really was. So your runner-up.
My number 2, Little Women, Jumanji, Interview with a Vampire, Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, that's a good one, too.
Kirsten Dunst, and also the movie Dick, which I almost put in for one of my underrated comedies. But she just is a very good actress. And even as a kid, I thought that she like had actual chops, you know? And then she kind of, I don't know, she made some different decisions as an adult in terms of what she took. I mean, taking like Spider-Man, but also Cat's Meow, and she's had
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah,
that was an amazing movie.
She's made some really interesting choices as an adult of like what Melancholia was a weird, like just I feel like she took the parts that she wanted to take, you know. But yeah, so she's my number 2. How about you?
Okay, so my number 2 child actor or actress, Punky Brewster's Soleil Moon Frye.
I don't know much about. Tell me about that.
Soleil Moon Frye. I mean, if Punky Brewster was that Punky Brewster a little bit before your time, Tim?
It was kind of on the a little bit on the border there.
The early '80s, and she played the rambunctious Punky Brewster.
She's the one. She wears like all different colored clothing.
She wore different color like shoes. And she wore bandanas.
Okay,
and she was just a cool little kid. She'd been adopted. And, she was such an impact, actually, on my childhood that one of my dogs was named Punky Brewster.
Stop it.
Yeah.
That's great.
How have we been married 5 years?
Yeah.
And I did not know that.
I had two.
Wow, this really impacted your childhood.
I had 2 dogs that were brother and sister Basset Hounds, which are the slowest animal ever. And the female was Punky Brewster, and the boy was Nitro.
Nice.
I didn't know that Nitro's sister was Punky Brewster.
We just called her Punky usually, but it was Punky Brewster.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right. Number 1. Do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
This is number 1 with a bullet. Okay? My best child actor or actress of the 80s and 90s, Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
Okay, think of Lost Boys, right? Goonies. All right. I mean, it's hard to throw a dart at the 80s and hit a movie Corey Feldman's not connected with.
He's part of the Brat Pack, right? Or is he considered part of that group, or is he?
No, Brat Pack was a little older. That was Demi Moore. That was Rob Lowe. That kind of group.
Well, whatever. He's still good.
But he was great.
So, I actually picked somebody who starred in an ABC after-school special with Corey Feldman.
Oh.
This is somebody who...
This is a great pick, too.
...has an amazing career even now, and started off really in the movie E.T., and that is Drew Barrymore.
Oh, wow.
That's it, but I feel, I don't know. I mean, if I were to make an argument, I feel like Drew Barrymore's had an amazing career, but I feel like Corey Feldman was busier in the 80s.
Doing cocaine.
And movies.
But
which both
here's
count.
the thing. The thing about
I don't
Drew...
think you can say that since we know Drew Barrymore was 10 years old with cocaine in Studio 54.
That's true. Yeah, the thing about Drew Barrymore is that she our dog is trying to get the tuna melt out of Tim's mouth that he ate like a half hour ago. The thing about Drew Barrymore, right, is that she did go through a really hard time, but then she cleaned herself up. She made very deliberate decisions of transitional movies like Poison Ivy when she was a teenager.
Yep.
And then she transitioned into like the girl next door kind of role in like movies that nobody remembers, like Home Fries, and movies that everybody remembers, like The Wedding Singer and that kind of thing. And now she has a talk show. But she's just amazing career, but she also has star power. And I almost picked Corey Feldman, but I didn't.
And I'm not taking it away from you. I think she's a great pick. I think she really is. I'm a big fan of hers. But when I think of the 80s, I just think of Corey Feldman. And I mean, Corey Feldman, when he transitioned, he also made decisions. Mm-hmm. I mean, it might have geared more towards reality shows and things of that nature, but he's still, he's still around, and I just feel like he had a rough time as well, even as a child actor. But I feel like he was like mass producing movies in the 80s.
I know, but the thing is, though, Steve, that some of them he has great performance. Like if you watch him in Stand By Me, he actually has an amazing performance. And
completely.
He's with Will Wheaton and River Phoenix, who I also almost put on this list.
Yes.
Having said that, he also did stuff like Dream a Little Dream Part 2. Like, he hasn't
that was probably contractual.
No, stop it.
But Dream a Little Dream Part 1 was awesome. We reviewed that.
He hasn't really... His acting went downhill as he became an adult. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
all right, Tim.
Luckily, we're not voting for Best Adult Star.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm a little surprised there was no Fred Savage on the list. Or it was Neil Patrick Harris, right? But,
yeah.
Well, but there's so many choices.
Much like franchises, there's a lot of choices,
There is.
The 80s and 90s were a time of,
Fred,
utilizing children.
Fred Savage, Corey Feldman, Will Wheaton, and Melissa Gilbert were all considered for this list.
I consider Melissa
Gilbert
as well.
And also Molly Ringwald. But Melissa Gilbert and Molly Ringwald were a little bit older by that time.
I'm going to have to go and say that I kind of agree with Steve's argument, even though Megan, I mean, I really think that early on, obviously, as a Gertie or whatever her name was in E.T., great performance as like a 4-year-old or whatever she was. But, I'm going to go with Steve's choice of Corey Feldman. I think the volume is there in the 80s. And even though Drew Barrymore perhaps had the better career long-term, I think as the pure child star, Corey Feldman's the winner.
Excellent.
I'm walking out of this room right now. This is nonsense. All right.
Well, how many people listening, though, are so frustrated with all these choices? Like, I can't believe you didn't pick this movie or that actor.
I want to say that I am in the Corey Feldman fan group on Facebook.
Yes.
That he sometimes posts to. So, because he is a great star.
There's someone out there yelling in their car right now, like, how did you not pick Atreyu from The Neverending Story?
I don't even know who that was. I'm sure it was well known.
I can't. I'm sorry. All right, so best child star.
Corey Feldman.
By the way, we didn't do that for the last one.
That's all right. Whatever.
All right, so the next Remis category is best cartoon.
And this is Steve versus Tim.
I got to tell you, this is the one I had so much trouble thinking about.
There were so many
possibilities.
We should have specified it as 80s.
Yeah, and if it were 80s, and that's the thing. You could pick earlier childhood or later childhood, And
so, Tim, what was your third choice?
My third choice... Am I allowed to have 3 third choices?
I know it's tough, but I had to narrow it down as well.
I guess, you know what? I guess I have to go with the one that I actually watched, which was G.I. Joe.
Okay.
It's a classic, and, they did those PSAs at the end, which have become memes now. Or they were memes a few years ago.
Yep. Knowing is half the battle, Tim.
Yes, exactly. So, it was definitely a staple of my childhood. Growing up,
it's a great pick. It's a staple of my childhood, but it did not make my list. Surprisingly,
well, there's too many choices.
And we reviewed G.I. Joe in season 1. My number 3 choice for best cartoon, Thundercats. Feel the magic, hear the roar.
Yeah.
Thunder, 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 thunder,
Yeah.
cats.
See, this is the very slight age difference. That's a little
It's a
bit
little
out of
too
my
for you,
time
yeah.
period. Just slightly.
He's 6 years older than you are. It's
I know,
not
but
really
you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
I'm saying it's not like he's like 6 months older than
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
That's true. So, okay, Thundercats, G.I. Joe.
But it's a good choice.
What's your number 2?
Again, I have a really tough time, but I think when I dive down on the show that I always wanted to watch the most, and I could barely catch it when it came on, when I came home from school, was DuckTales.
Okay.
And I always wanted to build myself, you know. In reality, if you had a vault full of gold and you dove into it,
Yeah.
you'd probably kill yourself. But
That was on my consideration list.
great.
DuckTales is a great
Great
show.
DuckTales
intro.
is a great one.
You can actually start this podcast probably with the intro music from that.
Yeah. That was on my list, and actually another honorary mention that didn't make my list that I thought of was Chippendale's Rescue Rangers.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I had that. Well, I had Tailspin on my list, which has Chippendale's characters on it, but that was not on my list, but
Yeah.
on my
But DuckTales is a solid choice.
honorary mention.
So
list.
my number 2 choice for best cartoon, I had to go back, kind of like you did with G.I. Joe, to something that influenced me as a kid big time. Transformers.
Yeah.
More than meets the eye. That battle, that ever-raging evil versus good Autobots versus the Decepticons just pulled me in.
I mean, it's an all-time classic, too. Especially with the movie franchise now elevating it. But it's tough to argue with. My choice is a little... It definitely doesn't have the reach of Transformers, but...
This is your number 1 now.
All right, my number 1 choice. Again, it's not probably one that has as broad reach as, and I don't even know that most people even have seen it. But I think Megan knows that my personal favorite when I was really younger was Muppet Babies.
That's a good choice.
Yeah,
We reviewed
that as well.
I loved that cartoon. Nanny, you could never see above her knees. Very annoying, but you know. Is what it is. It was kind of like, in a way, it was kind of like a Magic School Bus, with Muppets, you know? They'd go on adventures and whatnot.
And always in the nursery and
We
stuff.
talked about, when we looked at Muppet Babies, a lot of it's about imagination and play. And yeah, we talked about that a lot when we did it.
And it has Muppets. I mean,
Nice.
it's great.
That's a solid
I mean, there's
choice.
so many, you know, this, again, sorry, I just wanted to say, this was such tough for me because you have all the Nickelodeon shows, like Doug and Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy. Yeah, it was a tough category. But
So my number 1 best cartoon choice, and this is hard because we had so many to choose from in the 80s and 90s. This is a kind of a callback a little bit to your number 2 choice, but I had to go with Darkwing Duck.
oh,
Let's Get Dangerous.
wow, his best.
Darkwing Duck. I loved
best.
Darkwing Duck. It was like the Disney Duck version of Batman.
Yeah.
He was rich, but then he became a superhero. Oh my goodness.
See, what you and I did for this category, number 1, we went with our personal, not what the general public would
No,
consider
heck with
the
the
best
general public.
cartoon.
For getting people listening.
We're picking Muppet Babies and Darkwing Duck. To the hell with everyone else. You know?
All right, here's the thing. For me, this is a clear choice for Muppet Babies. Having said that, we already reviewed Muppet Babies, so Muppet Babies technically the winner. Darkwing Duck we will definitely watch next season.
I guess I'll take that.
All right.
So that's another L for Steve because the Cassidys have decided to gang up on him.
Well, that's not my last name anymore, but all right. So, our winner is
Muppet
Babies.
Muppet Babies.
All right.
Trademark.
Our next category is Megan versus Tim, and that is the TV show that deserves a reboot.
But does anything really deserve a reboot, though?
If it
I
was
was
good
thinking
enough,
about
it
that.
does.
And you know what the funny thing about me trying to think about this? I kept thinking about things and I was like, oh, that has already been rebooted.
That's the tough
We've
part
thought
of this
of
category.
we have had no originality by the writers
Right.
in the last 10
I
years.
actually have really clear reasons for each one of my picks.
Okay, great.
For it to be
I have no clear reason, so this should
Okay.
be a great battle.
So, my third pick is a movie that I think they should do as a TV show, kind of like they did with League of Their Own. And that is Fried Green Tomatoes.
Oh.
Fried Green Tomatoes is a great book, and it spans 2 different time periods from like 1920 to like 1940, and then like also in the 80s, 90s. Mm-hmm. So I think that if you did that as a TV show, I think it would work really great.
About like the time in between, because it had a definite ending to the movie when they're old, and so you're talking like about adventures that they had.
No. I'm talking about redoing that story, but as a TV show in a long form,
like a Netflix show.
Yeah, and
that's a movie. Right?
It's a movie.
Never a TV
she's
show.
saying a movie that she thinks should be a TV show.
They did that with League of Their Own. They took the movie, but then they made it into a TV show. And I also, a lot of people complain that the writer was gay, there were gay undertones, but it really wasn't clear because people weren't out in the 90s when it first came out in 91. And so I just think, I think as a TV show you could explore the relationships more, and it would bring out comedy, and it would also be cool to see the different time periods. So.
Okay. So Tim, your number 3 show that deserves a reboot.
This was a weird choice for me because I actually don't really remember it that well in terms of what it was, but I remember that I enjoyed watching it.
Okay.
So, The Adventures of Young Indiana Jones.
Yes!
Was a great series, and I remember
That's a good pick.
It is a good pick.
I remember really enjoying it, but I think it only had like 2 seasons and then went off the air.
It wasn't a lot, but I
It's
remember
River
it too.
Phoenix.
You know what? It's actually not River Phoenix.
No?
No.
It
'Cause I
just
looked
looks
it-
like him?
All right, don't quote me. 'Cause I feel like I looked it up before, and because I thought the same thing. I thought it was River Phoenix.
Yeah.
I think it was after
It's
him.
it's somebody else slightly famous, but yeah, I mean, it's also part of a major franchise and kind of an interesting take on the Indiana Jones genre and everything, you know?
Definitely. So, Megan, what was your number 2 choice?
All right. My number 2 choice was Fraggle Rock.
Oh.
Because the Muppets have been redone a bunch of different times, but they've never redone Fraggle Rock. I think they might have had a cartoon version, but it aired like around the same time as the original show. And I just think that because of where they live and stuff, it's like a timeless show.
Okay.
And I think it would be really cool to bring back. I liked big things that they would go and see. That it was like the guy and his mom and dad who were like king and queen. They were like big trolls or whatever.
Yeah, I forgot
and then
about
they had
that.
Uncle Traveling Matt who would do things. And I just think that even kids today would like it and enjoy it. So that was my number 2 pick.
It's a good pick. I went with a all-time 80s, 90s classic with this one for my number 2, Golden Girls.
Oh, that's
My
gonna be an
knowledge, it
interesting
hasn't
one.
been- yeah.
It has not been
They did
redone.
Golden Palace or whatever, which was kind of a spin-off with 3 of them, I think, when one of
Okay.
them left. But the thing I think about this, even though it's so iconic and it had, very famous leads, I feel like now you could find any 4, people who are, very strong female leads and redo that.
Yeah.
Or even do it with guys. You could do
No,
it.
I think
Golden Guys.
Golden Guys.
I don't think it would work quite the same way. That doesn't,
I think that's a
that
good
doesn't
pick, too.
work.
That's
but-
a nice pick. All right. We're down to number 1. You go first.
I'm ready for my judgments.
No one's going to go with me on this one, but all right, I went with a Nickelodeon show for this one.
Okay.
And I actually did not pick. It's a game show, and I went with Guts.
Oh.
I don't even
You
remember Guts.
So Guts was the most amazing game show, and at the end of it, it was 3 kids facing off to decide who was the greatest. Whatever. They had to climb the aggro crag. It was like this big fake mountain.
Yes.
And they had to I forget what they had to do on it, different tasks. And then if you won, you got a piece of the aggro crag as your trophy.
And no money.
Yeah. And then I want it redone exactly the same also with a British female announcer, Mo or whatever her name was. Let's bring it back to you, Mo. So that's my number 1.
All right.
Nice.
So, Megan, number 1 show that deserves a reboot.
My number 1 show, starring Sean Patrick Flannery, not River Phoenix, is Young Indiana Jones.
Oh, so it was on
Wow.
both your lists.
And
Your
again,
number 1 you didn't even realize.
my number 1 was your number 2 for the same exact reason. It is part of a great franchise. It was an amazing show. George Lucas actually developed the show. I think that it would have been I think probably it was too expensive to make, and they didn't market it right. But I think that you could have it today, and it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And do it justice and have it be like the show that it should have been.
Okay, so these are both two good ones. I'm not sure much about what Guts is, but I liked your description of it. But on the other hand, I'm hesitant to go with Young Indiana Jones, because if it was that great, then Indiana Jones would have been the best franchise of the 80s and 90s.
I almost
And
think
since you
that,
guys
but
didn't choose that,
culturally,
no,
it didn't
I think I have to
go.
go with Young Indiana Jones.
right.
It was on both your lists,
Yeah.
and I'm not as familiar with Guts, unfortunately.
And let's just say, Megan and I did not collude on that at all.
No,
I'm
we
actually
legitimately
surprised-
didn't
That's
talk
such an
about this at all.
obscure show. I'm surprised that you found it, too, or
Yeah.
thought of it.
I looked up, I wanted something specifically. I was looking for kids' shows of the 80s and 90s, and I was like, oh my gosh, that show was so good.
Excellent.
All
That
right.
brings us
Wait, so.
Young Indiana Jones, the winner of the Remis TV show that deserves a reboot.
All right, now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Tim versus Steve. The most overrated TV show. And I can guess what's going to be on Steve's list.
I'll start us off.
Okay.
Third choice on my list of most overrated TV shows, Murphy Brown.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting choice.
I
I
like-
watched it as a kid, and I just never got into it as much. It was very political, and you really have to be a Candace Berman fan. And I just, it never... but a lot of people were like, oh, Murphy Brown, it's so good. I think it was one of those things where people were like, it's supposed to be a political smart show, so if we talk about it and seem like we like it, then that makes us smart too.
I wanted to be a reporter because of that show.
That's sad.
I know. Anyway,
Well, my pick is a little bit weird for number 3.
that in the movie The Paper.
Because I actually really like this show, but early on it was amazing, and it's just completely gone downhill. So my number 3 is The Simpsons.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Oh, okay.
I mean, early on with the writers being all amazing. I mean, it was
That's a hot take.
epic show. Treehouse of Horror, love them. All of the early '90s, and then it just kind of fizzled out. But it's continued on.
I know, but that's
Like
a hot take. There's some Simpsons fans out there that are going to be like,
they're
what's
not
he
gonna be
talking
happy
about?
We
about
just
it.
lost 5 subscribers.
Well, don't worry, because I'm going to help you lose the other 5.
I know what you're going to
Because
say.
my number 2 most overrated TV show, Friends.
Yeah, there it is.
Wow.
I don't care how much everyone thinks that they loved Friends. No one cares about Friends. It's a bunch of pretentious late 20, early 30-year-olds sitting in a coffee shop.
I don't think
And they
that
had
you've
to add a
watched.
monkey to try to make it interesting, and the monkey outshone everybody. Okay? That's my thoughts on Friends.
They had the monkey in like 3 episodes of season 1.
Best 3 episodes of the show.
Stop it.
I can't even. I
Stop.
cannot believe that you picked Friends because I also picked Friends
Excellent.
as my number
Excellent.
2 choice as the
You guys
most
are the worst.
overrated TV show. Actually, I have not really that funny of a story, but I was in college 2004. And I'm in the dorm room, and I see, my friend Natalie's like watching TV. I'm like, "What is this?" She's like, "Oh, this is the series finale of Friends." I was like, "This show is still on? How is it still on?" Like, I remember it from like 1995 or 96 or whatever.
10
First
years.
season was pretty good. I'll give them that. And then then you're like, "What is this?" I mean, all right, a lot of people love it. I get it, but how are they affording that place? How are they able to live that lifestyle?
It's rent control. It's supposed to be her
know.
grandma's apartment.
So that
Okay,
should be the winner
alright.
just because we both agree. No.
I'm not saying it's not it's obviously an iconic show, but I just think it's a little overrated.
All right. Well, I really like it, but I understand why some people don't, especially guys. I can pretty much guess what your first choice is going to be, but why don't you tell us?
My number 1 most overrated TV show of the 80s and 90s, Seinfeld.
Oh,
You're not going
I
to agree on this
cannot
because Tim
stand
likes it.
Seinfeld. It's just,
No.
it's like, it's a stereotype of like the neurotic New Yorker. And I never dug it. I mean, I watched it, I tried watching it a number of times. And it never had any kind of plot that caught my interest.
There is no. That's the point. There is no plot.
Yeah, that's a stupid basis for a TV show.
Oh man, well I obviously vehemently disagree. That might be my all-time favorite TV show of the 90s, actually. We used to talk about every episode after Thursdays the next day. It's a
Tim,
water cooler show.
We just bonded on
Except I wasn't
Friends,
old enough
and
to
now
be
we're
on the
going
water
to...
cooler. I know, yeah. Well, I have very strong feelings about number one as well, because it's actually the show that always faced off against Seinfeld, Frasier.
Ugh.
Stupid TV show, not funny.
I don't disagree with that.
Completely overrated, and it kept winning award after award after award against Seinfeld. It blew my mind every year. I was like, who is watching this show?
But you know what blows my mind is I don't disagree with you.
And has it stood the test of time? Frasier has definitely not stood the test of time. Compared to Friends or
What blows my mind is it was a spin-off of Cheers, which was a good
great.
show.
Okay.
There are funny parts of Frasier.
Here's my
like
take.
any other show, but
when Seinfeld was on, I thought it was hilarious. The problem, I'm gonna go dark. The problem with Seinfeld, I feel, I've tried to rewatch it now. Post 9/11, New York really changed,
It doesn't hold up.
so it doesn't hold up because you're debating about stupid things like who paid for the salad. And after 9/11, I feel like the tone shift, and maybe not now, but I'm saying like 2001, 2002, 2000.
what does 9/11 have anything to do with it?
Because New York...
It all brings us back
When
to
there was a
9/11.
tragedy, people didn't care about the little stuff anymore.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
So that's the thing about Seinfeld.
I don't know. I still watch Seinfeld.
Having said that,
it was hilarious.
Frasier is one of the shows that I think is the most, for the exact same reason. The character was great on
kept
Cheers.
winning Emmys.
When you take the whole point of Frasier, Steve and I talked about this, is that he's a fish out of water in Cheers in this like blue collar bar, and he's talking about like poetry and like Freud. And when you take him out of that and you just have him and his equally pretentious brother,
when you put him around other people that have the same gimmick as he is, it's
funny.
not funny.
And it's not a funny show. And the only funny episodes are when they have people from Cheers, like Lilith comes to visit or Sam comes to visit or whatever. No, it's not a funny show, and I wholeheartedly agree. So that wins.
There's so many
anti-Remy.
There's definitely a lot of angry people out there right now
I
who
know.
really love Frasier or Friends.
I know. I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
Friends, at least, I couldn't blame people for liking it. Like
Yeah.
I kind of get it, but
All right, so Frasier, the most overrated TV show. Congratulations.
The next category is the Remy's worst performance by a good actor.
All right,
And this will be Tim versus Megan.
Listen, I know you don't have 3 for this one. I put a lot of thought into this.
I know
lot
that's
of
why
thought.
I couldn't think of too many. I mean, there's many out there.
No,
but
there are many, and I picked
I'm just not
my
as good
top
as you
3. I think will be surprising, except maybe my number 1. All right,
probably
number
have some
3. This individual ruined this movie for me, and it's one of my favorite books of all time, and they made it into a mini-series, and that is Molly Ringwald in The Stand. Stop reading all your lines off a cue card, Molly Ringwald. You can act in other things. She's like, oh no, Stu, don't go. You're gonna fight the devil, man.
Take 16 candles, Molly Ringwald.
I know.
In her defense, are many Stephen King adapted movies that good, other than like Green Mile and
yeah, because the problem is that she's up against Gary Sinise, one of the greatest actors of our generation.
That's true.
He's an amazing actor. He's acting his heart out, and they have no chemistry. He's like, Franny, I have to go, and she's like, oh no, don't go. That's Gary Sinise. You give him respect. I don't know if she just needs John Hughes to act well. Like, I don't know what the deal is.
Okay, so Tim, did you have 2 for this game?
yeah. So Megan should just go into her number 2, I guess.
Well, you go into 2.
I'll go into
you do
2.
2, and then I'll do 2.
I'm actually going to switch up what I had initially, and I have an argument for my number 1.
Okay.
Because the argument has to be made they're good actors to begin with. But my number 2, I'm going to go with John Goodman in King Ralph.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's a good choice.
That's a good choice.
I mean, kind of,
That's a good
I don't even know
choice.
what to say about the movie, really. Maybe it's more the movie than John's acting, but, not his greatest role. And I do think he's a good actor. He's been in a
John
lot of
Goodman's
stuff
phenomenal.
more recently.
Yeah.
You know, one of his best roles was that Cloverfield movie.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Amazing in that movie. Not a comedy, but
Cloverfield
amazing.
Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My number 2 pick. This is a blockbuster star. This is somebody who has won Oscars. This is somebody who should have won more Oscars than they did win. And that is Leonardo DiCaprio in the show Growing Pains.
Well, he was very young. I mean, you're taking you're an Oscar-winning actor, and you're going, when
stop.
He was 5, he was terrible.
He was not 5. I think he was like 8 or 9. And a couple years after this, he did What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Which was great.
Which was amazing. Yeah. And he is the kid that they bring in because they know that the series is failing. And it's just supposed to be adorable little kid. So he didn't have the acting shot. Do you know?
He's cutting his teeth.
Wait, do you know also Brad Pitt also had a guest star role in many episodes of Growing Pains?
Interesting.
There's an interview with both of them talking about it. I'll put it on our Facebook. I'll put it up on our Facebook because the interview of them both talking about how they were in Growing Pains is pretty funny.
Okay.
All right, Tim, what's your number 1?
My number 1. First, I want to make the argument. My number 1 is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
And I do think he's a good actor because, first of all, he's a blockbuster name. People wouldn't watch him if he wasn't a good actor.
No, agreed.
He has a certain charisma. Yes, he's not Meryl Streep or Robert De Niro, but he has his own niche of,
he's pulled off comedy. He's pulled off...
Yeah.
And he's gotten better, I think, as an actor, and delivering lines and whatnot as time has gone on. But anyway... So that's, first of all, let's establish he is a good actor.
Yes.
In his own way. Twins.
Yeah.
1990, 2?
Yeah, Danny DeVito.
No, it was early Schwarzenegger, and there's one particular scene where he says this line like, "And Vincent, you're a part of my life, and I'm a part of yours," or it's something like that. And I mean, it's not delivered well.
So that's your nomination for
100%.
Worst performance by a good actor.
Okay.
Well,
he was put in more of a dramatic role there, and it wasn't quite, again, his niche. So
also, but Kindergarten Cop he was great in.
That's true. Yeah, interestingly.
So he's not Meryl Streep, but you know who is Meryl Streep? And you know what she was in? A little movie starring Roseanne Barr called She-Devil.
Oh.
So if you've never seen it, Roseanne Barr plays a very ugly housewife whose husband leaves her for Meryl Streep. He's her accountant, and she is a romance novelist.
Yes.
And she talks like this through the whole film. And Roseanne Barr very slowly destroys her life.
Yeah.
It had a potential, but she is not good in it. And it's surprising to me that she did this movie.
Yeah.
It is a horrible movie.
Even the greats miss once in a while.
I am. This is a tough one because both of these are really renowned actors who both were not in great movies.
Perhaps Meryl Streep a little more renowned in her own way, but
I am gonna go. I'm going to go with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I actually can't.
Stop it.
I can't believe that.
That's just because you want to watch Twins and you don't want to watch.
No, I've seen She-Devil, and I have nothing against it. I'm just picking it because this is.
I cannot believe
this is my thought. Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins, and the only thing that I will add to that is you really could have locked this down easier. Mm-hmm. If you would put up Arnold Schwarzenegger in Junior.
I didn't even think about that.
Where he was the pregnant dad.
Yeah,
that was the problem I had with this category is that some of these really bad movies I never even really watched.
But this is supposed to be by a good actor or actress. He's not, he's good in a few things, but he's no Meryl Streep.
He's good. He's good in his own...
Okay.
You are nonsense.
In his own genres, he's good.
Stop.
You can file any complaints you have with the administration.
I will. All right. Up next.
You versus me, so let's get that aggression out.
Most overrated movie.
1984's Rhinestone. Okay, get this. Somebody thought this was a great idea. Sylvester Stallone is a cab driver who can't sing. And Dolly Parton is a famous country music singer who's going to teach him and make him into a singer.
I'm so glad you didn't put that for your daughter. I want to watch that movie. I don't think I
Most overrated. And everybody at the time was like, Sylvester Stallone, Dolly Parton. No.
I'm sorry. I've never actually seen it, but you describing
Steve pulled the
it
big
is
guns out for this one.
I've heard of it, but you describing the plot is hysterically funny.
That sounds amazing, actually.
My number 3 movie, I don't think it's overrated now, but it was at the time. And everybody I knew, like, wanted to watch this movie a million times, and that is Clerks.
Mm-hmm.
It's mildly amusing. There are really long takes. It's in black and white. It's basically a student film. And I get that it launched a couple people's careers, right? Mm-hmm. And you got Jay and Silent Bob out of it. I just didn't find it, like, that funny. And at the time, people were like, oh, we have to watch Clerks, like, all the time. And it drove me crazy.
That's your prerogative. I was a Clerks fan, but I can understand.
It's not bad. It's overrated.
All right, so my number 2 choice for most overrated movie, 1988. Everyone for that entire year was talking about this movie and how great it was. And it was artistic and it was deep thought-provoking. And I hate it. And I can't stand to see it even mentioned. That's the only explanation I'm giving for this movie, okay? A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, yeah, I remember that movie. Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying.
It's Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Kline.
I don't need to hear your nonsense.
Okay.
It was overrated. That's I guess why people thought it was so great, but it wasn't. Okay, so Megan.
All right. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this one. This is just a personal...
More than Clerks?
Yeah. This is just a personal thing. I just don't find it that funny.
Okay.
I think its plot is scattered and all over the place. And I do like Bill Murray, and he's in it. But Caddyshack, I don't get. I don't get it.
Okay.
Wow.
And I know that other people like
that
it.
That is going to pull some hate. That's a hot top.
I know other people love it. And I actually should have put it for my number 1, because my number 1 I really don't want to watch. I would be willing to revisit Caddyshack and maybe see if I'm wrong.
Can I say something about that, too? Because
Yeah.
I actually caddied at Country Club of Buffalo when growing up.
Yeah.
And it was crazy after... Because I watched the movie first and then I caddied. How much similarity there was actually.
It held up to real
stuff
life, huh?
Like, some stuff that would actually happen, like playing basketball.
Yeah.
There's just like little details and stuff was like spot on.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, there's some ridiculous elements to
All
the
right,
movie. But
so...
I don't know. I don't know about that one, Meg. But.
My number 1 most overrated movie of the 80s and 90s. The year's 1997.
Yep. We have the same one.
And I wish this movie would sink
There's
just like the ship it's named after. The Titanic.
Listen, there's no voting on this because this is a clear winner.
Is this what you had too?
And now we're going to have to watch it because we've promised
If I
that
have to
we
hear
will.
Celine Dion.
No.
You know what's funny? I had anyone had Titanic and any other movie, I would have chosen Titanic.
so it's a clear winner for you.
This is kind of crazy, but I have never seen the movie full through, and I never saw it in theaters when it came out. So yeah,
You've never seen that movie all the way through?
I refused to go see it when it came out. I refused to watch it later.
I worked in the movie theater for Titanic. Yeah. So Tim and I worked at the same movie theater, but at different times. This guy, I think, was probably stealing from his own company, right? Embezzling.
Probably.
He had no cash registers, it was the Lockport Mall, and most days it would be slow. And then Titanic came out, and people would be like, I need 6 kids tickets and 3 adult tickets and 2 seniors. And you're like, I have to add all that in my head. And the tickets are like $5.75. Like, he didn't even have it just straight. So you're trying to like add all this in your head.
You were adding VAT and...
He also had no credit card machine, so we had to be like cash only. It was craziness.
And the Titanic.
But getting back to the movie.
But I worked in the theater for that movie, and I did have it on VHS. I enjoyed it. I just think that it's overrated. And it did get overplayed, especially the Celine Dion music. And now we're gonna have to watch it.
Okay, so
all right.
The next category of the wait, we have to say it.
Oh,
so the most overrated movie. The Titanic. Okay.
All right.
Number 10. Our next category, the Remis. scarred me for life.
Yeah, the scariest kid or family movie. All right, this is also me versus Steve. Steve, I put a lot of thought into this one. My number 3 pick. There's a demon in this.
Okay.
And it chases after the protagonist, and that is The Last Unicorn.
Oh,
we
that's
watched
a good
this
one.
in school on
Yeah.
the day before Halloween or something, because no teacher wants to teach when all the kids are hopped up on candy. People legit started crying. Like some of the people in my class, we were like second or third grade, and the kids were like crying because this demon bull is chasing The Last Unicorn.
That is a good one because I like The Last Unicorn.
It was a good movie, but it did scar me for life.
This is a little different because I took it as scariest movies I saw as a kid or with families.
Come on now, that's totally different.
And so now that I'm hearing your takes on it, it's a little different, but it's okay. We're going to go with this. Number 3, 1987's Hellraiser. I saw it as a 10-year-old in 1987. And
classic.
The Pinhead.
Pinhead.
The thing about Hellraiser is I, to this day, can't tell you anyone who was in it.
Yeah.
It had no big star. But Pinhead and the other demons out of the box? Oh, no.
Iconic front box at Blockbuster.
Yes.
I always remember seeing that at Blockbuster
Yeah.
with the...
Yeah.
And Netflix just redid it. And I haven't seen the new one yet. But
That's Devils. I'm not watching
we'll
that.
see. So go ahead. Number 2.
Number 2, possibly scarier than Hellraiser. Okay, so this has come up. We were going to watch this for the podcast, and I turned it on, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't. Secret of Nim.
Oh, come on. Secret of Nim was a great movie.
Secret of Nim.
I loved it. I've seen that movie so many times.
Listen,
I read the book.
First of all, it's rats. Secondly,
But that falls out of your Elizabethan specialty. Though.
That's true. It does.
Wear an amulet. One of them comes up and it's like dead, and it's like and spinning around with this freaking amulet on. There's rats that are like. No, I can't deal with that movie. I cannot deal with that movie.
Okay, well, almost as scary is my number 2, 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street. I saw it in 1984 as a 7-year-old.
Steve.
And it first has Robert Englund in it, who's probably one of the greatest horror, scary movie actors in history.
Robert Englund is the GOAT.
Okay, he is the GOAT. Also had Johnny Depp in it. Young Johnny Depp, probably one of his first,
Also that girl from Just the 10 of Us.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody else who's in it.
Her name, Amber Heard.
No.
But Nightmare on Elm Street literally had me afraid to go to sleep for days on end. Yeah. Because that's when Freddy gets you.
We had very different childhoods.
Okay, my number 1 is a little more family-ish. A little bit, but not...
If we have the same number 1...
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I will go first.
Okay.
This movie was supposed to be maybe a sequel, but it can only be called the weirdest reboot of all time. There are severed heads. There are people with rollerblades for hands.
We do not have the same.
Talking chicken.
Oh my gosh.
And there is a stone monster.
What you're going with,
though. This is.
And it stars Fazula Balk. And
Return
this is
to Oz.
Return to Oz.
I knew where you were going with that.
Return to Oz. I mean, look, the regular Oz scarred some kids with the flying monkeys, but you get over that and then you enjoy it as an adult. Return to Oz, it starts off with Dorothy talking about Oz, and they think she's crazy, so they send her to the insane asylum where she gets shock therapy treatment, and then there's a flood. I can't even deal with this whole movie. It is weird from start to finish. It's one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. Go ahead.
1990, network television decided to put a miniseries on.
Oh, okay.
Stephen King's It.
That's a good choice.
Starring Tim Curry. And what they did, these sadistic bastards, is they put it on Sunday night, then Monday Night Football. So you had to wait till Tuesday for the next part in the finale of this miniseries. Okay? So as a 12, 13-year-old kid, I saw this, and even though it was on network TV, it was scary as heck.
I actually think this is, to argue for you for a minute, even though I think mine's creepier for kids especially, the Stephen King's It from TV is actually scarier than the new version. And I'll tell you why. It's because, well, number one, structurally, it's done correctly. The whole point is to parallel the kids and the adults. So having It Part 1 be the kids and having It Part 2 be the adults totally ruins the structure.
Right.
Number two,
it's going back and forth.
It's like the thing with Jaws. Jaws is scarier when you just see the fin and you see the girl
Yes.
being pulled underwater and you don't actually see the shark. And the movie, the feature film that was recent, ruins that. It's like Radio versus like.
I'm just going to throw a little bit in my own corner here. Cast: Tim Curry, Richard Thomas, John Boy, Annette O'Toole, Seth Green, John Ritter.
All right.
Okay,
I'm going to throw a thing in my pool and say a chicken yelling, Dorothy!
I don't know about that. All right, Tim, we leave it at your capable judgment.
Moby with the heads, Tim.
You know what's funny is when you announced the category, the first movie that popped in my mind was Return to Oz.
Oh, Tim.
But
No!
I think that the
come
category is Scariest movie, and while I find Return to Oz incredibly creepy, and it could give me like kind of weird nightmares, in terms of pure horror scariness, the It miniseries is definitely the winner.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with Return to Oz, but I think you're right, Tim. Return to Oz is like discerning.
The
Right.
category...
It's like
It makes me feel uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it's very weird.
The category is family kid movie.
I feel like if it was put on network TV as a miniseries, it's family,
What?
right?
They're bathed in blood, and it's implied that, like, the guy...
Not in the
abuses
original
stop.
one.
Yes, it is, in the book, even.
I'm sticking with it. Thank you, Tim. Finally.
Stop it.
Okay,
And now you have to find the miniseries.
All right.
next category.
This is Megan versus Tim.
So bad it's good.
Best campy fun movie. Mm-hmm. What's your number 3 pick?
I have a good number 3, actually, with an actor that you just mentioned, John Ritter. Stay Tuned.
Oh,
That's a good pick.
I thought you were going to go with Problem Child, but that's a good pick.
I'm not a big Problem Child fan, but also
Stay
could
tuned,
be
the one
could be
with
a
the
choice.
demonic satellite dish?
Yeah, he buys
Okay,
a
good
cable
one.
dish that the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I can't remember his name,
Yeah.
is, kind of like a henchman for the devil.
Yes.
Sells him a dish that sends him to hell, and they have to work their way out of it. So, classic comedy from the 90s.
That's a good pick.
It's so bad it's good. It really is.
I want to say I had a number 4 pick, and that was Troop Beverly Hills, but we already reviewed that, so I didn't put it in my categories. My number 3 pick involves tribal dancing, involves nerds versus popular kids, and it involves buying somebody for a date so that you can become popular by dating them, and that is Can't Buy Me Love.
Okay.
It is a great classic 80s teen comedy, and it's everything you want in a teen comedy, but it's not good.
Okay.
But it is good, campy fun.
So, Tim, number 2.
Sounds spectacular.
So bad it's good.
Number 2, I went with kind of a classic, actually, but it is so bad, which is Weekend at Bernie's.
Okay.
That's a good...
It's so terrible. Such a ridiculous movie. But I love it. All right.
All right, my number 2 is a forgotten film that I don't think many people remember at all.
Got me so forgotten.
I know.
Yeah.
Lily Tomlin plays 2 parts. Bette Midler plays 2 parts, and that is Big Business.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Twins from the country, and one of them gets swapped with a twin from the city, and twins from the city, one of them gets swapped with twins from
I
the
actually
country.
do remember that movie, and let me tell you, I found it somewhere recently on Netflix or
No,
wherever.
it's Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. I found it on Disney Plus, and I actually did watch it again, or I tried to.
Does it hold up?
No.
No.
I couldn't even agree with that as so bad it's good.
But Bette
It just was
Midler, no,
bad.
it is. I think it's so bad it's good. Bette Midler is yodeling. They have a scene where she dresses up and she goes into the boardroom and she's like, I'm going to be bossy. They swap partners, like not in the way that you think. Like they trade like ex-husbands or something. It's hilarious. And I always liked it. Yeah, Big Business.
Okay, so we got to get to our
That's a
number
good pick.
one.
All right,
It
what's
really
your
is.
number one, Tim?
So bad it's good.
Again, I didn't have as I don't know if I had as creative picks as you guys, but I feel like this movie it is just good, but it's also ridiculous, which is The Goonies.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
a way, I mean, yeah, it's a classic now, but I mean, the plot is ridiculous. Meeting this monstrous sloth guy who's also friendly and has been chained up for years by his family members.
Finding a Spanish ship in
Yeah, finding-
California.
I actually think that
There's so
movie
many-
is just genuinely good. But they do call the treasure rich stuff, which does annoy me. Like they're like 12. You know what the word treasure is.
There's elements of it that are just kind of ridiculous, and so for that reason, I think it's bad in a way. But it's also great bad. It's kind of like a movie like you would imagine that if you were 13 and you wanted to make a movie, but then you're actually Steven Spielberg and an amazing filmmaker, and you made it.
So Tim's nominee is Goonies. What is your
All right.
so bad it's good nominee?
Could be cheating a little.
Mine is another Meryl Streep movie that is not a good movie. But there's something about it that I do find enthralling, and that is Death Becomes Her. Death Becomes Her is
That's a good choice.
Goldie Hawn, Meryl Streep, and Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is hilarious as the schlubby straight guy who's married to one of them and kind of trying to have an affair with the other. They both take this potion that keeps them alive, but then if you get injured, it doesn't prevent the injury, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of interesting special effects for that time period. And I have to say, if I'm recalling correctly, really not too much happens except that it's a satire and a spoof about plastic surgery culture at that time. And I just think it's a funny movie.
And doesn't at the end they're walking out together and her skin is falling off or something?
Yeah.
And then her head falls off.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous ending.
Because they've beaten each
Too.
other up, but they end up yeah.
And then no one can help them put themselves back together anymore.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
thing.
So I'm going to have to go with Death Becomes Her for this category.
Yeah.
It's so bad it's good because I will tell you, I remember watching that in theaters when it first came out. What year was it?
I think I didn't have the year. I think it was 91, though. 90,
Okay.
91.
I remember watching it when it first came out, and in my memory going, that was a hilarious, great movie. And then I watched it 2 years ago. It was on HBO or something, and I was like, this is terrible. Yeah. And so because of that, I feel like it fits. I still watched it, but I was like, this is not as great as I remember. This is a bad movie.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it at least since maybe 96.
But what if I had gone with a movie like The Room? I mean, because that's is that even in? Is that this in the 90s?
I don't
believe?
think so. Maybe.
I think it is in the 90s, but
What was
I mean,
your...
that's just so bad. Is it even considered? I went more mainstream. I think.
Yeah.
So our so bad it's good category, Death Becomes Her.
All right, and now
The final category.
Our last category. This is Desert Island Movie. The movie you can watch over and over as inspired by the talk that they have on The Office.
Tim and I are going to
Mano
put
a
up
mano.
Yeah.
some thoughts.
This is the movie you can watch over and over. What is your third choice?
Well, this is a very personal choice. I mean, it's everyone's own desert island. So
Yeah.
I'm going with, for me, I absolutely love this movie. It's called 12 Monkeys.
Good
Sci-fi
choice.
classic, all-time classic. Certainly not a movie most people would pick, but I don't know. I just love that movie.
Okay.
I love the futuristic element, the time travel.
That's the category, What
Bruce
can you watch
Willis.
over and over and over?
Yeah. So that's a number 3 pick.
All right, what's your number?
My number 3 pick, 1994's Legends of the Fall.
Interesting choice.
I love that movie. I mean, it's got Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, Aidan Quinn, Henry Thomas from E.T.
True.
great
I can't
movie.
argue with the cast.
And at the end, old Brad Pitt dies fighting a bear with a knife.
don't-
how can you do
I
that?
don't
a
remember
lot of
the
spoiler
end.
alerts
Yeah.
right now.
If you haven't seen
How many
it,
people
it's
really, though, are
94.
rushing out to see
Yeah.
Legends of the Fall right now? Oh, I need to see that right
All
now.
right, so Tim, your number 2 desert island pick.
One of my all-time personal favorites again, which people may not even know of, a little movie known as Sneakers.
Oh, that's a good one.
Amazing
too, Tim.
cast. Slightly, I guess you'd call it not thriller really, but suspense.
Yeah.
Suspense / comedy. Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, great cast. Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix, amazing. And Ben Kingsley as the, villain.
Have you watched that since the internet?
Yes.
That's kind of like a
I bought it on
Really?
I bought it on YouTube video and forced one of my friends to watch it.
Nice.
Actually, my friend who's from Nepal, so he had no idea what was going on. He did enjoy it, though.
One time I forced one of my friends from India to watch Wizard of Oz, and she was like, "What is this movie?" And she introduced me to Bollywood, which I love, but she was like, "This is an American movie that everybody loves." She's like, "I don't get it." All right, Steve, what's your number 2?
My number 2 Desert Island movie is 1998's What Dreams May Come.
Oh.
Robin Williams, Annabelle Sciorra, and Cuba Gooding Jr.
That's a good one.
It all happens kind of like in heaven almost.
I like the paint
Very
part.
good. It's very sad.
I was going to say, I don't know that I could watch that over and over.
But
I would be the
I
most
love that
depressed
movie for
person
some
on the
reason.
island.
I love that movie.
It's
for
a
some
great
reason.
movie.
Because you're a
It
real
is.
man.
Visually, it's amazing too.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
All right.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie in a while. Now,
Number-
that one I'm going to run out and watch.
Number 1. Here we go.
Number 1, Schindler's List. No, I'm just kidding. Couldn't possibly say that.
Oh my gosh.
That would be very depressing.
I can't.
Great movie, though. Great movie.
Schindler's List is the best movie ever made.
It probably is.
I just
It
swapped
probably
one movie
is.
all over again.
It really is. No, my real number 1, The Sixth Sense. No, I'm just kidding. Again,
I thought about that.
you cannot watch that movie
All
over and
these
over.
shores. No.
Anything with a twist ending. All M. Night Shyamalan movies are out for this
Yeah,
category.
they are.
But actually, I'm going to redeem myself a little bit on what you said earlier, best franchises. And we're going with Back to the Future.
Nice.
Oh.
1985. And the
Nice.
reason, back when I was younger too, before the internet and everything, this movie was constantly on. I don't know, TBS bought the rights to it or something.
Yeah.
And it would always just be on, and you would just find yourself watching it over and over and over again.
Steve
you know?
and I talked about that with Star Wars because when we first started dating, I was like, I've never seen like all of Star Wars. Like I've seen like bits on TBS. Like you come in and it's like 11:15 and it's in the middle of a lightsaber battle. But I had never seen all the way through. Good choice, Tim. All right, what's
I
your
made her watch all of them.
in a row?
job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What's your
My
number?
number 1, Desert Island. Now, I feel like Tim's playing to the judge here because I feel like you're going to go with Back to the Future. My number 1 Desert Island film I could watch over and over again. River Runs Through It from 1992. Robert Redford directed. Brad Pitt,
Another
Craig
similar-
Sheffer from The Program and from Nightbreed. Tom Skerritt, a very young Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Wow, he was in that movie?
Yeah, he played one of them as when they showed him as little kids.
Oh, interesting.
Tim, I'm going to tell you something. River Runs Through It and Legends of the Fall might as well be the same.
I was just going to say.
Megan.
That's what I was thinking. They're very similar.
You can tell Steve
has a very
he has a
specific
very
taste.
specific niche taste. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't mind it. I mean, that's a well-known.
I will say, even though the third one is actually my favorite, I think we're going to have to go with Back to the Future.
Wow.
Ooh.
So,
I don't think anyone out there, their third one is their favorite. That's probably
okay.
that's probably the least favorite
It's
one.
okay.
no. The least favorite is the second one. It gets too dark, and she's got fake boobs and stuff. No. And his
The
dad's
Western,
been
yeah.
murdered. The Western, I actually think, if you just watch 3, it holds up as a standalone movie.
Interesting.
But over a river runs through it?
Yeah.
That's okay.
I mean,
Because it's a
the-
desert island
I
movie.
understand
I
my
don't wanna
movie's a little
watch-
too highbrow for this
It
movie.
is because it's sad. You picked 3 depressing, sad movies.
Back to the Future is a pretty iconic movie compared to River Runs. I'm not saying River Runs Through It isn't a good movie. It is.
But if you're watching all of these,
familial
if you're
trauma.
watching all of these,
Stop.
wouldn't it be great to go, man, that's so sad and it sucks. Well, at least I'm on this desert island.
We really needed like the Little House on the Prairie box set so we know how to survive the desert island
Right.
climate. Also, I don't know how we're watching things on a desert island.
That's true.
But the point is that
We
you
have a
watch it.
laptop. No
All right.
internet.
So let's recap to go back through. Oh wait, first
Back
to the
Future.
Steve was yawning for that. I'm not giving you a second take. I'm leaving it in. All right, our best date night movie was Megan's Choice for Princess Bride. Our best franchise was Star Wars. Our best underrated comedy was Uncle Buck. Best child star was Corey Feldman. So we'll pick a movie with Corey Feldman, Steve, to watch
You could
next
pick
time.
The Burbs if you wanted to.
We could pick The Burbs. Our cartoon was Muppet Babies. Since we've already reviewed that, we're going to go with Darkwing Duck, which was the second choice. Our best reboot was, or most should have a reboot, was Young Indiana Jones. This is the only one. I'm not sure if we can find it.
We'll try like heck.
But we'll try like heck, yeah. The most overrated TV show by a mile is Frasier. Worst performance by a good actor is Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins. Scariest movie is It, the miniseries.
You missed most overrated movie. Titanic.
Most overrated movie I was going to say next, and that was Titanic. So Bad It's Good was Death Becomes Her, and the Desert Island movie is Back to the Future. So we are going to be doing all of those in season 2.
Season 2.
Did I hit all of them?
That is a wrap for the first annual Remis Awards.
Those are the Remis winners and losers in some cases.
The Remis winners and losers.
And we're also, at this point, going to invite Tim back because we didn't...
Season 2.
In season 2, we're going to do Power Rangers. And we were wondering if you would like to come over and watch it and then review it with us.
I'm an expert in that.
Yeah.
That's what I hear from your sister.
And
back in the day. Back in the earliest days.
And we thank you for being part of the Remis, because even though you felt that you wouldn't have much to contribute, Tim, you actually
won the game.
You actually chose more winners than anyone.
Yeah. Some questionable choices out there, I think, but you know.
Tim played the game smart because he played to who the judge was going to be.
Oh, I didn't. I definitely did not know who. Yeah, I did not know.
Yeah. So that's it for us this time. We are going to have some of our highest rated, most commented on episodes coming up, and we've got some awesome surprises coming up as well in a couple weeks when we start season 2. We hope to start with a big bang, and we're going to have some announcements about that and what we're going to be doing in addition to these great things.
Make sure you smash the like button and hit subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. I actually have no idea how this whole podcast thing works, but if there is something like that,
hit subscribe, and also leaving reviews can really help, especially on Apple iTunes. It helps us get seen. For now, have a Merry Christmas, everybody. My name's Megan.
My name's Steve. Have a great Christmas, and we will see you in season 2.
And we'll help ruin your childhood again next year.
That's right.
Bye.